Woman, why are you weeping? Well, we can imagine Mary Magdalene's response. Why am I weeping? Well, duh. This is a tomb. I'm grieving. What else would I do here? Why am I weeping? The bottom of my life has dropped out. Jesus, my healer, my teacher, the light of my life is gone. The Romans arrested him, dragged him away, and murdered him. The soldiers were armed to the teeth, so there was no way I could stop them. All I could do was stand by the cross with his mother and the other women and watch him die. And now, talk about adding insult to injury. The least I can do is come pay my last respects to Jesus. But when I get here, what do I find? He's gone. Someone has taken his body. I can't even say my last goodbyes. And she weeps again. Woman, why are you weeping? The question at first came from two angels, but now there's someone else, a man. Mary turns around and sees him. He repeats the question, why are you weeping? And he adds another, who are you looking for? She assumes this man is the gardener, stripped for work. Sir, if you've moved the body, please tell me where. But this man calls her by name, Mary. Suddenly she realizes who it is. It is Jesus, her teacher. Rabboni, she exclaims, and spontaneously she moves to embrace him, probably what any of us would do. But Jesus won't let her touch him. Don't cling to me, he cautions. Something about him is different, according to the story. This is not a corpse come back to life. It is something new and mysterious. The risen Jesus. And Mary Magdalene is his first witness, really the first apostle. Now, I don't know if it happened this way or not, but I know this story is true. That line has been attributed to various people, including Native American storytellers and also author Ken Kesey. For me, it offers a helpful way into the Easter story. Stories can be true even when they're not historical fact. Modern people often ask, what do the Jewish and Christian stories have to do with us? We don't believe in miracles. We don't believe that Moses parted the Red Sea with the wave of his hand, his staff. We don't believe that Jesus literally rose from the dead. So what's there left for us to believe in? And many give up on religious festivals. They are content to celebrate the coming of spring, which in itself seems a miracle after a long winter. They celebrate spring and leave it at that. And of course, celebrating spring is not only wonderful, but necessary. As a wise rabbi once said, if we can't rejoice at the coming of spring, how can we be happy in utopia? Even where I live in Albuquerque, where the winters are relatively mild, I feel the thrill of Earth's awakening every year when blossoms and leaves first appear, like these iris blooms from my garden. It's as though I'm seeing them for the first time. But, and now I'm speaking personally, spring celebrations don't completely cover the religious territory for me. Much as I love springtime, there are things it doesn't account for. The warming air and the lengthening days don't touch the murder of George Floyd or the recent murder of a young man in Grand Rapids. They don't touch the attempt to overthrow our democracy, or Putin's invasion of Ukraine, or the ever-present threat of human-caused climate change. And so during Passover and Easter, even as I rejoice in the coming of spring, I also long for the stories that acknowledge tragedy and evil in the world, and then somehow point beyond them to sources of hope. And the Passover and Easter stories do hold that power for me. As I see it, we don't have to take ancient stories literally to find power and depth and meaning in them. It may help to know that even among Jews and Christians, we have lots of company in not taking the stories literally. I'm not even sure that the people who originally told these stories meant for them to be taken as fact. Historical accuracy is probably not what the biblical writers were after. They were seeking to tell of powerful mystical experiences or powerful communal experiences, either that or to convey the meanings of events. Paul the Apostle writes, "Behold, I tell you a mystery, not behold, I tell you a fact." And that might tip us off that hearing the resurrection story or the story of the escape from Egypt is not meant to be like reading the Washington Post or Scientific American. And getting to the reading for this morning, the Gospel of John is Exhibit A for a book not meant to be taken literally. It is full of symbols and archetypes, and in a few chapters, it even makes fun of literal mindedness. This morning's passage is rich in symbolism, starting with the very first words, early on the first day of the week. The Jungian writer, John Sanford, suggests that whoever wrote the Gospel of John is telling us this is the dawn of a new age, a new consciousness, not against Judaism, but rather against systems of domination. And its first witness, furthermore, is a woman, Mary Magdalene, and thus the feminine principle, which has been repressed in patriarchal religion, rises once again. But before she can experience resurrection, Mary Magdalene has to enter fully into grief. Unlike Jesus's male disciples who come to the tomb for a quick look and then run away, Mary stays. She's fully present and she weeps. And the weeping goes deeper than a good cry, therapeutic as that may be. Mary's tears are of the kind that early desert Christians called the gift of tears. They are a gift because they spring from the soul's deepest desire, the desire for divinity, that is, for life itself. Alan Jones, who retired as Dean of San Francisco's Grace Cathedral, says that these tears are preparation. They clear the mind, they open the heart, they soften the hardened and dried out soul, making it receptive and alive. Mary's tears set the stage for the amazing thing that's about to happen, her encounter with the risen one. But the realm of grief isn't supposed to be a permanent dwelling place. There comes a time when Mary is called to move on. Woman, why are you weeping? And this at some point stops being a question and instead becomes a challenge. Why are you pouring your energy into a tomb? Why are you seeking the living among the dead? It is time for Mary to turn away from the tomb and turn back towards her community. Martin Smith is an Episcopal priest who writes powerfully about the spiritual life, and he calls resurrection the act of living under the authority of the future, not the past. And it's not that the past isn't important. It's crucial, helping us understand ourselves, showing us how things got the way they are. But the resurrection story is about breaking the past's control over us. It calls us to imagine new possibilities, to dream new dreams. It is easy to live under the authority of the past, to become trapped in it and unable to imagine anything else. My colleague Marilyn Sewell, the UU minister in Portland, Oregon for many years, tells a German fable about a circus bear. For many years, as the story goes, this bear was locked up in a 9-by-9 cage. It was a terrible life for him as he was carted from town to town, bouncing on rutted roads for spectators to see and make fun of. His keepers gave him only minimal care, and he became bedraggled and sad-looking. Eventually, the circus failed, and the bear was released to the Berlin Zoo. And Marilyn says this was like bear heaven, with its flowing water, bathing pools, trees, and ledges, plus other bears to play with. But all the poor bear could do till the very end of his days was to choose an area that was 9 foot square and pace around inside of it. Even in this beautiful place where he was well fed and well treated, the bear carried his captivity around inside of him. The past controlled him. He couldn't even see the present, which was right in front of him. I don't know about you, but it reminds me a little bit of my own situation, having been quarantined for about 2 years with COVID. And it has taken me a while to get used to the idea that I might be able to travel again or even go out to eat. And the Exodus story suggests that the Israelites, even in their liberation, faced similar temptations to the circus bear. It tells us that even before the Israelites had crossed the Red Sea, some of them had formed a Back to Egypt committee. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians, they whine, rather than to die in this wilderness. And this is a theme played over and over on the journey to the promised land. And the people had become accustomed to slavery, and it was oppressive, but safer than an unknown future. That is why later on the rabbis said this: it took just one night to get our people out of slavery, but it took 40 years to get slavery out of our people. So what might it mean for us personally and maybe at Cub to live under the authority of the future? I imagine that each of our answers would be very personal. They depend on what our own particular 9 foot square patch of ground looks like. What about you? Has some painful part of your past lodged in your soul? Do you visit it over and over? Do you rehearse old grudges or replay old sorrows? Do old wounds cast a shadow over your present? Do unforgiven hurts block your way forward? It's been said that forgiveness is giving up the hope of ever having a better past. So, can we let go of backward-looking hope and let life take us to new places? Can we turn from the tomb and begin to dwell in possibility and promise? I will close with these words of a great living Protestant theologian Walter Brueggemann. He says, the Easter question is not whether you can get your mind around the resurrection, because you cannot. Rather, the question is whether you can permit in your horizon new healing power, new surging possibility, new gestures to the lame, new ways of power in an armed, fearful world, new risk, new life, leaping, dancing, singing, praising the powers beyond all our controlled powers. So may it be.